2007, a time when Dragon Ball fans were spoiled with what many considered to be the pinnacle of the franchise's video game adaptations, Budokai Tenkaichi 3. With its sprawling roster, chaotic yet thrilling combat, and that feeling as if you stepped into the shoes of a Super Saiyan, Tenkaichi 3 captured the hearts of every fan who picked up the controller. It was a love letter to Dragon Ball, from the explosive battles to the meticulous attention to detail in every Kamehameha, every scream, every transformation. For over 15 years, fans have been asking for a sequel, waiting, hoping that one day Tenkaichi would rise again, bigger and better than ever before. Then suddenly, a spark was lit. When the announcement of this long-awaited follow-up finally dropped, the collective hype was unreal. It was the kind of excitement that comes from years of nostalgia behind a game that defined a generation of Dragon Ball fans. And now, that game, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, has finally arrived. After years and years of waiting, fans finally have their hands on the next entry in the franchise. But the question still remains. After a decade and a half of waiting, can this new game still ignite the same spark in fans' hearts and live up to the Tenkaichi legacy? Honestly, I'm not so sure. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is held as one of the best Dragon Ball games ever. Before the Tenkaichi series, Dragon Ball fans were stuck on a 2D playing field, not counting that one misfire, with limited rosters, complicated controls, and a desire to get even closer to fighting opponents at the same speed and power as the battles in the anime. When Tenkaichi first launched, fans were immediately thrilled by the unlocked potential of fighting in a 3D space, something that was rarely seen in other games upon its time of release. The combat we knew had transformed, allowing for range strategies, terrain traversal, and fresh concepts that made us rethink how to approach battles. In addition to the new dimension of fighting, an unimaginably huge roster of playable characters was included. The roster of fighters kept growing and growing all the way through Tenkaichi 3, where it managed to pull together over 160 fighters to choose from, making crazy amounts of characters a Tenkaichi staple. This seemed like an unfathomable number at the time, especially on that old PS2 hardware. Not to mention all the modes and features the game had available to us. Tenkaichi 3 challenged what was possible in a video game at the time, and made us thrilled to see what the next generation of Dragon Ball games could become on even more powerful hardware. Flashing forward to the present, 15 years in the future when Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was first announced, the expectations for this title were immeasurable. Could you imagine a modern-day sequel to the game that pushed the limits of content available in a game 3 entire console generations later? It could have anything. Hundreds of fighters, arenas based on every single battle ever seen, any and every special move ever launched, perfected modern combat with next-gen graphics and features, and every bit of story across all 5 Dragon Ball animes. Hell, maybe even the manga if we're lucky. Plus, with the quality of recent modern Dragon Ball games being some of the best in the entire franchise, minus this one, Lord only knows what kind of crazy title Sparking Zero could become. The anticipation was real, and the hype was fully loaded. To say I was excited for this game would be an understatement. As we inched closer and closer to launch day, I could barely contain myself. I didn't care if I had to work, I didn't care if my apartment caught on fire, I didn't care if a bomb blew up the earth. Nothing was stopping me from playing this game and enjoying every moment of it. 6 p.m. Monday rolls around, and I dove headfirst into this chapter with high hopes. Oh man, look, almost everyone is here. Whoa, the Tournament of Power? Zeno? Look at that blast, holy sh! But after hours of playing, I started to feel something. Something I haven't felt before. I wasn't having fun. Can you believe that? I wasn't having fun with a Dragon Ball game. It's sadly not quite the transformation I was hoping for. Sparking Zero to me feels like somewhat of an unfinished concept for an outdated game. And I feel like part of that is because it married itself to a game series spanning 15 years back. While innovative at the time, games have had 3 generations to evolve, while Sparking Zero feels more simple and repetitive. The gameplay is very similar to Tenkaichi 3, almost to a fault. Players fight in these large 3D semi-open areas with a fixed over-the-shoulder camera perspective. The game emphasizes medium-paced combat with a focus on key blasts, rush attacks, counters, and combos. Players can perform various special moves and transformations to overpower their opponents, eliminating them in that signature Dragon Ball style. Sparking Zero does improve on some of the early flaws of the Tenkaichi series, such as better camera control, more customizable button mapping, and the ability to fight in teams of up to 5, allowing for longer battles. There's also a ton of modes, challenges, and extra content packed into this 3D fighter, just like the other Tenkaichis. But by locking itself into the Tenkaichi series, it seemed to inherit some of its flaws that seemed like products of the time, such as lacking controls, shallow movesets, inconsistent AI, basic story modes, and some terribly balanced gameplay. Modern Dragon Ball games control super well. From firing off combos to the responsiveness of inputs, it seems like a rarity where the controls felt clunky or difficult to use. When a fight is going well, Sparking Zero feels great to play. But when it's not, the responsiveness is what seems to be missing. Nothing takes you out of a fighter faster than your character not responding to your inputs. From blocking and blast moves overlapping, combos locked in and continuing when you try to use a special move or an ultimate after launching an opponent across the sky, to the weird use of guarding and perception counters not feeling consistent, the way this game plays in the heat of battle makes me feel like less of a fighter and more of a punching bag. Sparking Zero's roster size is massive. By the end of the first season pass, we can expect over 200 playable fighters. However, with the giant selection of fighters, the amount of character-specific moves have dwindled. Each version of a character has a maximum of 5 special moves in total, and typically only 3 of those do damage to your opponent. While it's cool to see all these characters and iconic moves stretched across different fighters, the lack of multiple special moves leads to some serious repetitive and shallow gameplay. Sure, some characters can transform, giving them new movesets, but some of the coolest fighters in the game only have 2 transformation states. Not to mention there's only 2 other basic moves like a punch and a regular blast that doesn't exactly hold up the back end of our movesets. This is especially noticeable when fighting in the new 5v5 team mode. You're clearing out enemies with the same exact ultimate move over and over again, seeing the same cinematics over and over again. In past modern Dragon Ball fighting games, there seemed to be larger movesets or at least combos to use that made the pacing of the battles feel fast enough and felt as if you were using everything at your disposal without it getting old. This is definitely not the case with Sparking Zero. The pacing seems to be a little bit slower at times, making us wish that we had a few more moves per character to play with. In addition to the controls feeling inconsistent, another huge issue that seems to take me out of the game is fighting against the AI. Unless you only fight against other human players online, you can expect to be fighting the CPU a ton across the several modes Sparking Zero has to offer. The behavior patterns of the AI seem to flop between bullshit and brain dead. Computer players will block or dodge every single special or ultimate attack unless you chain it at the end of a combo or they were already within kissing distance of you. Not to say that they should just sit there and take it, but if you can only land a special in 2 different scenarios, the fun of using those specials goes away. Something weird happens too if you launch an ultimate and miss. For whatever reason, the CPU character will literally fly across the map to the edge of the level, then charge up their ki every single time. They don't fly back, they're not preparing to counter you with their ultimate, they just fly and sit there until you go over to them and continue the fight. This has killed the immersion of battles on several occasions. The difficulty of opponents seems to be inconsistent too. I stopped checking to see what difficulty my fights were on because honestly, I'd either easily roll over a hard opponent or get my ass handed to me by the weakest rank on a silver platter. Now, while AI and controls can be tweaked in patches, there's another 2 issues that probably won't see a fix, and they seem like way bigger fundamental issues than the rest. One of the most important aspects of a Dragon Ball game is some sort of story connection. Without it, we might as well put Goku in a Tony Hawk skateboarding game, which I would totally play, or a game that has nothing to do with Dragon Ball, just uses its license to just, they already did that. Sparking Zero does have an expansive story, but something about it just feels like an afterthought. I understand that there's no way in hell that the development team was going to animate every single part of Dragon Ball media, but I have to say I'm rather disappointed at how bare bones the cutscenes are, how dated the animations can be, and how uninspired the general story coverage is. It's a sequel to a PS2 game, but it didn't have to include PS2 level cinematics. It just feels like they didn't care too much about the story's representation and put their efforts in elsewhere. Sure, there's a few different campaigns to play through, as well as these what-if branches, but here's a concept for you. What if we just made the story mode what it should be? The worst element is those what-if branching stories that can be unlocked once you reach certain conditions. However, it's nearly impossible at the time of writing this to figure out how to unlock these moments. These conditions are left invisible to the player, making us search elsewhere in a guide or somewhere on the internet to access content that should be available to us from the start. I cleared through 4 of the campaigns, including Goku's, and I can say I effectively unlocked 0 of these bonus chapters. My final gripe with the campaign being bare bones is that I was really looking forward to the first faithful adaptation of Super. In past games like Xenoverse and Kakarot, Super did have some representation, but the Tournament of Power and Zamasu's arc were both either left out or just given basic missions. This was Dragon Ball's chance to do Super right, but its segmented storytelling just leaves us wishing for more. All these issues could come down to my final complaint, and the one redeeming quality that Sparking Zero could have had, but chose not to. From the start, a lot of folks said Sparking Zero is not a balanced game. And hey, there's no problem with having an unbalanced game. However, I would argue that Sparking Zero is unfortunately more balanced than it should be. Do you remember playing some of the older games when we were kids? How Super Saiyan Goku would just plow through the Cybermen and grunts? Dragon Ball has always been about power, and about breaking through your limits to become stronger than you've ever imagined. Keeping that in mind, and knowing that Sparking Zero isn't exactly a competitive game, how in the hell is Mr. Satan able to withstand a slaughter of attacks from a mastered Ultra Instinct Goku? Or why does Hakai, the Destruction Blast, not immediately kill whoever can't block its incoming blow? How in the hell is Yajirobe able to dominate the current meta? Something that would have made this game so much more interesting would have been having power level accurate battles. Now, I'm not saying if Jiren punched Kid Gohan that he should explode, but these characters and their moves are so iconic, and when their spectacle and power is lessened just to balance out weaker characters in the game, it takes away from the action. I understand why people wouldn't want this, especially with online play. Everyone would just be picking the same characters, and it would equally be no fun. A more balanced experience is necessary for online play, but maybe break it into categories of fighter strength. Imagine for a second that there is an unbalanced mode, and you're in that battle between Mr. Satan and Ultra Instinct Goku. You pick Goku, you have fun blasting Hercule to hell. You pick Mr. Satan, you'd have the challenge of your life, and if you won, you would have bragging rights across the multiverse. I think this final point stands out because of how a lot of the early press for the game promised that it would not balance out the roster. And with that idea of uneven fights sounding kind of fun, it was a little bit of a letdown to see the final product not take advantage of the various power levels in the Dragon Ball mythos. I feel like these reasons are why Sparking Zero left a bland taste in my mouth. In the week I've spent working on this essay, I've caught myself just not thinking about the game, which is kind of sad to me. For previous releases, I would run around my house and Kamehameha my cat. But with Sparking Zero, I've already lost all excitement. Sure, it was alright and it had some fun moments, but after 15 years of waiting for a true successor to a childhood favorite, an okay reaction is just not okay in my book. I hope you're enjoying the game, and I hope future content updates can reinvigorate my interest in this title. But if not, I'll just go back to playing the other Dragon Ball games while we wait for a new spark to arrive. Did you like the game, or are you disappointed just like I am? Let me know in the comments below, and drop any title you think I should review next, or a topic you'd like me to talk about.